Welcome to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco, bringing you interviews with industry experts and regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews in 60 days, guaranteed. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to have with me today HR leader and career coach Shelley Piedmont. She's been an HR professional for over 20 years, has read thousands of resumes, and interviewed just too many candidates to count. She has hired for everything from entry-level hourly positions to senior leaders on behalf of Fortune 500s, small and private businesses, and really everyone in between. She's been a corporate recruiter, an HR manager, and a director, and holds 2 senior certifications in HR, both the SPHR and the SHRM SCP. In 2018, she launched her own company to help job seekers to present themselves in the best light possible and to make the positive impression to lead them to their next job. Shelley, thank you so much for joining us on this Friday afternoon before we kick off the 4th of July week.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for asking me to join you.
So you heard me give an overview of your, you heard the quick bio. I'd love to hear in your own words. Can you give me an overview of what you do and, how you came to be in this role?
Well, it's kind of interesting. As you mentioned in my bio, I've been doing human resources for a long time. And this job coach that I do now is something I very much enjoy. Having been on the other side as a corporate recruiter and in talent acquisition, along with some other parts of HR, I really saw the need for help for job seekers. What I see is people not necessarily putting their best foot forward. As a talent acquisition leader, I was always very patient and always very good about trying to dig in and to try to find where that person's skills were. But others in this area are maybe not as diligent, and so the idea of having this business where I could help others and coach them, especially on the career side, so they could find the career that really was the best fit for them, the most engaging, as well as helping them in that process of trying to find a job. So crafting resumes, helping with the LinkedIn profile so that it gets noticed, as well as helping people put their best foot forward in the interview process.
That's wonderful, and I love that you have experience from both perspectives. That's just so beneficial. So given that you have been on both sides now, what do you see as a couple of major challenges facing those that are jumping back into job search after a long time, or perhaps even making a career change today?
Well, Virginia, I think one of the things that job seekers feel is a challenge now, here in 2019, is that they hear so much about the low unemployment rate and that it's a seller's market. So they feel like they should be out there and getting a job in 2 weeks, 10 days. And the reality is that it's not necessarily that in their particular profession and in their particular location. So I think for some that's a rude awakening because they think it was going to be really easy, and oftentimes it's not. It can be challenging. So I think that's one challenge. And I think the other major one I see is that with the evolution in this field and in job search, that in the old days, contacts were important, but you could send in your resume and you would get a look through of that because there wasn't as many. Nowadays, with the applicant tracking system, it has made it so much easier for people to apply. And people really can get lost in that process. So networking, making contacts, doing those sorts of things that get you noticed outside of the process by not only the talent acquisition staff, but also hiring managers, that is extremely helpful. But a lot of people are reticent to do networking. I don't know if that's just because they're introverts and they just are very uncomfortable with the thought of that and just doing it. But I find that is a challenge for many, many job seekers.
No, I concur. You're right about this great market is a dual-edged sword, because it also means that many more people are dipping their toe in where maybe they wouldn't have. And depending on how crowded their niche is, their industry, or where they live, it can be a pretty competitive process. And then coupled with the fact that ATS means anyone can hit a button from all over the world to apply to a job, it's really, I feel like it just overwhelmed the system. So you have to go above and beyond. Where before, the pool you were being considered in was much smaller, so you maybe didn't have to go that extra effort.
That's exactly correct. It takes all of about, 2 or 3 minutes maybe in some cases to apply for a job. And so the talent acquisition teams, the number of resumes that they have to go through is very large. Yeah. And there are many people who frankly just are not even remotely qualified for the job, but they still are part of that process. So it slows things down. And so, they say a recruiter looks at a resume for 6 seconds.
Yeah.
I've timed myself and when I've done it, and it's more than 6 seconds, but you really have to do a good look through of it. Things need to really be very like flashing lights on your resume, because if I'm going through a requisition, I may be going through hundreds.
Yeah, don't make them dig for it. Don't make them dig for it and make it.
Correct, absolutely. So if I have to dig really hard to kind of figure out how you meet the qualifications, that's going to make it tougher for you to stand out. And quite honestly, you might get forgotten because it's on to the next.
No, I agree. I mean, the upside is there are more positions for you to consider than there ever were before. You would never have found out about so many opportunities. You just have to go the extra mile for them.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that, and maybe we've touched on it, is there something that really just surprises your clients the most, your resume clients, not on the talent acquisition side?
Sure. I think the biggest thing, honestly, Virginia, is how to articulate their value proposition. So in marketing, we talk about the value proposition. And what do you bring? What do you stand for? And very few people, I think, do the hard work of figuring that out for themselves. And when you have that value proposition and you know exactly what it is, everything you do becomes a lot easier. Your resume is so much easier to write when you know what you're trying to offer and why you are unique from somebody else. Your LinkedIn profile, how you interview, all of that becomes so much easier and more compelling when you know what you stand for. But so many people have no idea what they stand for. And it does take a little bit of work to figure that out. It's probably, to me, the toughest part of the job search process, and it's a part that many people skip. And that's to their detriment.
Yeah, no, it's hard to, I'm a really good writer, but I didn't write my own resume. I paid a colleague to do it. I find it's very hard to write about yourself. And you do need that. You need to know what you bring to the table and be able to articulate it. And you're right, once you figure that out, everything else does sort of fall into place, because you can have a version for resume, a version for LinkedIn, a version for an elevator speech, and a version for tell me about yourself in your interviews.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you make a good point, which is somebody else doing it for you. Obviously, everybody could write their own resume, but the help of having somebody else do it is the questions that are asked. And as if I'm writing a resume, I'm asking specific questions because I really want to know, what do you stand for? What have you done? What have you accomplished? And
why do people want you?
Why? Yes, exactly. And oftentimes the reaction I get is, oh, I never thought about that. Yeah, absolutely. So when I'm doing that, I'm thinking also from my talent acquisition hat and my many years of doing that, which is those would be the kind of questions in talent acquisition I would ask. So yes, please make sure you're putting that forward so the person who's reading your resume absolutely knows what you do.
So what advice do you give someone, and I'm sure they come to you all the time, I'm thinking about doing a job search, getting back in there. How do I get started? Where do you have them start?
What I really feel is very important in a job search or career move, whatever you're doing, is that it's important that you're going to something and that you're not running away from something.
Yeah.
Too often, people don't like their boss, they don't like the job, or they don't like the company, or the commute, or whatever it might be. And I just don't want to do that anymore. And they're fixated on not doing that anymore and not thinking about what will be best for me. So I have so many times heard and have seen people who say, I don't want to work for a boss that is micromanaging. Okay. So they're very focused on, I need to get out of a situation where I'm micromanaged. And so they find another place where they are not micromanaged, but then they can find that they don't like the company, they don't like various aspects, I don't like the job, it doesn't interest me. And so they didn't think broadly of not, I want to get rid of this situation, but what is going to be the positive? What is going to engage me? What are the trade-offs that I might need to make? But if I know what I'm looking for, then I can easily decide if that trade-off is worth it or not.
So know your deal breakers, and have it. So you really need to do your homework, because you're right. Otherwise, you're being reactionary, and you might trade one misery for another.
Yeah, it's amazing. You find that, and I have seen this, that people will investigate buying a new car longer than they will investigate what employer that they will go to. And you think about it, you're 40 hours a week, full time, you're spending at that employer with the people around you, your team, and so that better be a positive experience, or it's going to be a long 40 hours each week.
No, I've had a couple discussions on LinkedIn where we say, would you ever go buy a house without a sense of where you want it to be, how big it needs to be, what neighborhood it needs to be in, what the commute was like? You would never do that. But people do with their careers. They often don't think of it in that way. But it's a huge investment it's a big decision. And it's, like you said, it's 40 hours a week if you're lucky. So, no, very good advice. Yeah.
Absolutely, and people need to really take the time and make sure that it's the right place. It's helpful if you have the time to make those decisions. I think what ends up happening because of financial needs, people will feel like they have to take the first job that comes across because they don't have the ability to either be out of work if they're out of work, or they just need to change their situation. And that sometimes can work not to their advantage.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree about that. What about a person who did jump in to a search and it is not going well? Because I get this a lot. They come to me after they've been applying online or whatever it is. And, how do you make them refocus to get their job search back on the right track?
Well, one of the things I think, if you're not having success, I think sometimes people will blame others. And it's important to, put the mirror up and say, what am I doing that is not working? Now, fortunately, when clients come to me, that's because they have a realization that something is not working. They may not know what it is.
What it is, right.
And part of that is, okay, if you're coming to somebody, or even if you're not working with a coach and you're just doing your job search on your own, you need to be open to feedback. And the important thing, I think, is the feedback has to be from people that will give you the unvarnished truth.
Yeah.
And that may not be your family, and it may not be your friends who will do that. So you really need to hear what you might not be doing well. So, but you usually can figure out from where you're stuck in the process where the problem is. So if you are not getting any kind of interviews, either phone interviews or in-person interviews, then you can really kind of focus on the resume.
Right, or how you're getting the resume in front of them.
That's right, or the networking part of that. So that's the issue. If you are getting interviews, but you're not getting any offers, then you know that it is how you're putting yourself in front of the hiring manager when you are in the interview. And then we can work on that, how you're answering questions, how you're presenting yourself. So you can kind of dissect it a little bit, but then you have to be able to hear that maybe the way that I'm putting myself forward is not helpful. Maybe my body language is not bad. Maybe I'm talking too much in the interview, or I'm not talking enough, or I'm not engaging, or I can't answer the questions exactly.
Right.
You have to be able to take that feedback and then, work to try to change how you're coming across.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. With the interviews, you can record at least your side of the conversation sometimes, and you can hear what you sound like. You can practice what you look like on videos. But yeah, I think you're right. Doesn't need to be a paid professional, but you need to talk to someone who's going to tell it like it is, or maybe talk to several people. And sometimes when two or three people say the same thing, then you know that they've hit on something.
Absolutely. I think you're quite right, especially if you think the interview is where you're getting tripped up, then yes, absolutely. Have a mock interview and have it video it and see how you come across, because people do not realize how they come across, but when they see it on video, then it becomes quite apparent.
I hate looking at myself on videos. For one, I'm always like, pretty sure that's the problem. So what about those people that come to you and they aren't really sure where they want to go next? They can go in a number of different directions because their skills are very diverse. What are your thoughts on the best way for them to go forward?
That's a really good question, and a lot of people get stumped by it.
Yeah.
Depends where they are in their career, but I see it at the beginning of the career when people just have no idea what they want to do, or a vague notion, or it can be somebody who maybe is mid-career.
That's where I see it.
Where they've gone on a path maybe because family kind of pushed them that way, or they thought that was the right thing, and then they decide, no, that's not really what I want to do.
Yeah.
So what I tell people is, because when we're kind of talking about, kind of career paths, that one of the things I say, what does that voice inside of you tell you? And sometimes you have to be very good about listening to that voice. So I just tell people,
listen to your voice.
Listen to yours, but here's what I say. Okay, unplug. No phone, no music, no nothing. Sit in a place and just let you have your thoughts. And where is your thoughts taking you when you come to the subject of what you want to do? And listen to it, because you'll get down the right path by doing that. But sometimes people are like, I don't know, I'm just getting all these thoughts.
Yeah.
So I kind of break that down. What excites you? If you were to read a book on a topic, what would be topics that you would be like, I could read 10 books on that topic. That is just awesome. It really engages me. That's a little bit of an indication of kind of the path that you can go on. Or thinking about when you get so engrossed in something that you lose all track of time. So those are all good indicators of kind of maybe that's the path you need to go on, because that's really what's engaging.
Good advice. Yeah. Because you could not. Sometimes you could do a lot of things. It's just which one really excites you.
And sometimes it doesn't have to be one or the other. So you could have a career that takes multiple strengths and puts it together. So as an example, you could be really strong in accounting and you really like accounting. Okay, so you're a really numbers person. But you could also have really good writing skills. Okay, so they're kind of different skills. And what you could do is, if you're like, well, how can I bring that together? Well, maybe you start a blog and you do that about the accounting profession. So you kind of bring in both. But you sometimes have to be a little creative about it. But there's many opportunities where you can do that.
That's really interesting. Well, yeah, you're right. Sometimes they can. And sometimes you can merge, like someone who can do sales and marketing. Sometimes you don't. I do feel like sometimes certain skill sets can be targeted at the same time. But I love the idea of being creative. To your point, blog about accounting if you really, and that'll help satisfy that creative aspect.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I would caution people though, and I'm going to put on my talent acquisition hat, is when you are interviewing for a position, okay, they're going to want to know that you're committed to that particular type of work. Okay, so I have had people who've interviewed and said, well, they come in for a particular position, and then they tell me, well, my interest also is in something totally different. And so I have to sit back as the hiring person or the recruiter, and I have to say, well, do they really want to do the other thing? Because if they really want to do the other thing, then this job might not be the right one.
Yeah.
Or I'm also thinking as that, well, am I going to spend a lot of time training this person only to find that they're going to want to go in a totally different direction fairly quickly? So you have to think, well, what will that hiring person think about that? So you have to be really careful.
Yeah, you don't want to appear to be a flight risk.
Right, and what your message is going to be, because I think most people are, if you have interest in other areas, it's not a bad thing, but you have to really kind of say, this is where I really want to be. I'm committed to this. Yeah. Because that is what will win over the hiring manager.
That's a really, that's a really good point.
Yes.
Do you feel like there's a way to showcase that extra skill, going back to the accounting and blogging thing, like maybe you could say, I love to write about accounting, and I love to, something that you could maybe be a speaker on at conferences, and you can represent your company well. Like, do you think there's a way to position that side of you to benefit the company?
I think so, absolutely. So I think in that example, you could say, well, I love accounting. I really just, it interests me so much, but I also like to do writing. And I think that, there's opportunities probably in accounting for me to be able to maybe write things maybe in a newsletter, or
right.
maybe there's decks that we need to put together, or who knows what it must be.
Perfect, yeah.
Where my like of this and my desire for communication may be very helpful for the department in being able to get their message across.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you're right. That shows your commitment. Your willingness to do even more than what the probably initial job describes. Okay, this next question is one that can get touchy, and I love the fact that you have the talent acquisition perspective. I think lends itself, you're the perfect person to ask. What are your thoughts on age discrimination, or I guess really any kind of discrimination when it comes to hiring practices? You're too old, too young, too white, to whatever, male, female. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the topic? How do you recommend people tackle it?
So there's been a lot of talk, mm-hmm. especially I think probably within the last, 6, 7, 8 years, about age discrimination. And do I think that it happens? I do think it happens. People have all sorts of biases, and you mentioned it's your age, but it could be others.
Race, religion, all of it, gender.
All right. Yeah. Absolutely. People who are overweight often say that they feel that there are biases against them. And sometimes it is consciously that people consciously know that they have the biases, and sometimes it's kind of unconscious. Yeah. So it's really naive to think that hiring decisions are not sometimes based on that. And older job seekers often do struggle with the perceptions of how they will act in a company's workforce. So sometimes that perception is that older worker won't fit in, whatever fitting in it needs. Maybe I've heard that they're not flexible enough, that they're too set in their ways, or that they don't have up-to-date skills. And, I kind of chuckle at that because it could be, that could apply to many groups.
Sure.
Old, young, in the middle. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it's very individualistic, and it's really not good to say as a group that is what is the characteristics of that group. So I think that is very to the detriment of a company if a person has that particular mindset. So what can a candidate do? Well, I think kind of going back to, you always need to sell what you can accomplish. Okay, so it is not necessarily what you do like every day, but what are the results that you can give? That's really, I think, the key to how you sell yourself. And so when you can say, well, in this job, I can tell you I had something similar, and I did X, Y, and Z. I accomplished this. Here were the problems that I faced. Here is how I got around the problems, and here is how I benefited the company. Okay? Yeah. Then you'd have a very compelling story that you can tell that many other people may not be able to tell.
I agree. Those stories, compelling stories, are the best way to mitigate biases.
Oh, yeah.
They tend to forget. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
And remember, when we were talking about age, but there are many companies that do embrace older workers. So, it may be one of those things where you might have to do a little bit more work if you feel like that's a problem in your particular industry. And it does tend to run in some industries more than others.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. So, but I think you might have to do a little extra work if you feel that that's what's happening. But there are many, many companies that are looking for people that can get results for them. That's the bottom line for them.
So back to the doing your homework at the very beginning.
I think so.
What industry?
So. And
go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that when you're doing your homework, if you are an older worker, is look on the company's website or look at their Facebook or LinkedIn and see the pictures of the people that work there.
Good idea,
okay?
Yeah.
And see, do you see anybody that looks like you, whatever you look like? And that can kind of give you a sense of what that culture is like and how you might fit in with that culture.
I love that. What are a couple of industries where you feel like the age piece comes into play more than maybe others? Or maybe it's the reverse. Which ones are more open to all ages?
Sure. I think all industries, all areas probably are open to all people of all ages. But there does tend to be, I think, in the tech sector, especially, it kind of skews to a younger age group. But maybe I'm an optimist, but I think that's going to change too. There is no reason why older workers would not and could not have the same skill sets as the younger ones. I
agree. And it's back to if you're a little older and you can tell the story, you articulate your success. Yeah. I think that people want results. They don't care what shape or size a person is in if they can give them the results.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that is one area where you might find more issues. The other one that comes to mind is marketing. Just because I think marketers tend to think they want to sell to, well, they're not selling, but they're marketing to younger. I mean, you often hear that is what is their target market?
Yeah.
And so there's a thought, well, people that are marketing to maybe a younger market, there may be a preference for people that are kind of in that market who would understand it better.
And I was going to say tech and marketing also, there's a lot of technology involved in those, and that stereotype about not being familiar with the technology also comes into play. So whatever you can do to show that you've got the tech chops for those roles. I've worked with a lot of clients that take courses to close the gaps with marketing.
Yeah, and Virginia, you bring up a good point, which is older workers, but every worker needs to keep up their technical skills. And nowadays, it is so much easier to do that.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of options for that. So it's not, I took a course, 10 years ago in whatever it is, and I haven't looked at that since then because that's not terribly helpful. So you got to make an investment in yourself, in your career, to make sure you have all the skills, both the technical and the soft skills, to do what's needed.
Really good advice. And to your point, it's easier than ever to get those skills, and a lot of it's free or very cost effective. You don't need to go to a brick or mortar school for a lot of this stuff.
Oh, absolutely not. There's like YouTube and Coursera, Udemy.
Yeah,
There's
but
a bunch
LinkedIn
of
Learning,
them.
if you're a premium member, it's included.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of opportunities to get some training in multiple areas.
Yeah, no, I agree. Really, really good point. Okay, so if someone says, I am leaving to go job search, what are 2 tools that I need to have in my tool belt? What would you say they are?
Okay, so I'm going to put one that's a little off the wall and one that's, I think, pretty
on the wall,
but
okay.
overlook it. So the first one I would advise people to do is a little quiz, actually.
Ooh.
Yeah. So Gretchen Rubin has written many books. You might have heard of the Happiness Project and Better before. And she has a quiz that she had put together to define what your tendency is. And this is for accountability. And so you take this quiz and you go into either one of 4 tendencies. And she puts them as upholders, questioners, obligers, and rebels. Okay, and the reason I like this as a job seeker, what you know about yourself will help you in how you approach your job search. So as an example, in those 4 tendencies, I have taken it, and I am an upholder. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that I meet outer expectations. So if you set a deadline for me, I will meet that deadline. But I also meet inner expectations. Okay, so if I wanted to learn guitar, let's say, I would make it happen. I would learn guitar. I would put it in my schedule and do it. So I am, from a coaching perspective or job search, very easy because you just tell me what to do and I will do it. I have no problems. I will make the time. Okay? So upholders are not a big percentage of the population, according to Gretchen Rubin. I'm kind of an outlier.
Okay.
Most people actually are what she calls obligers. Okay, which that means they need accountability to do those things that they want to do just for their own self. So when it comes to outer expectations, they're great with that. They're the people that are so helpful, and they'll go out of their way to help you. They have a harder time with their inner accountability. So I want to change a job, let's say, and I don't necessarily like this career and I want to do something else. Obligers have a hard time with their job search because all these other things in their life, their kids, their spouses, the neighbors down the street, they will be more priority than their own thing. So obligers need to get accountability outside of that of themselves. So if they're doing a job search, they almost need a accountability partner. To somebody who's going to say, well, what did you do this week? Did you do X? Did you do Y? Because if they know that they're accountable to somebody else to report back, then they'll do it, all the things, and they won't put it off. So that's why I think it's helpful. It's a nice tool because if you know you're an obliger and you want to do a job search, I need to find like a support group or a job search group or somebody else that will hold me accountable for getting this done because otherwise I may just not get to it. The resume, I'll put it together when I get a chance, that sort of thing.
I love that.
Yeah. Questioners, which is another big group, that's my husband. He'll do it if he can understand the justification for it.
He needs to be, you have to get a buy-in.
Yes, you got to get the buy-in. So you have to understand the reasons why. If you understand the reason why and you can get your arms around that, then you'll do it. So as an example, questioners, why do I have to network? Okay, that seems just kind of you're just telling me that, but I don't understand why that's important. Why can't I just use the job boards? And then if you can explain to them, well, this is what happens when you do the job boards. This is what you do with networking. And if they can buy into that, then they'll do it. So if you're a questioner, then you know, I'm going to have to dig in, and I'm going to have to really understand before I'm going to do this.
Okay.
And then the last one, the last group's rebels, and they're tough. They're just tough because their whole thing is they don't like outer accountability, which makes sense, but sometimes they don't like their inner accountability either. They have just a hard time. They want to do what they
want to do, yeah. Are those the entrepreneurs?
Oftentimes, absolutely, because that works for them.
Yeah.
But if they're in the job search, then they need to figure out, okay, it's sort of like understanding if this is the person that I want to be, then what do I need to do kind of to be that person? Okay, so they have to kind of be very philosophical about it. But,
it raises your awareness, and also the kind of, and when you're interviewing, you know the kind of person that you need to help you perform your best, right?
Right, absolutely. So, that's why I kind of chuckle. This is a little unusual, but I think
I love that. Yeah.
You know who you are, then you set it up in a way that makes you successful. So I advise people to take it because it's not just for your job, it's for your life in general. But I think it's really interesting, and it has applications, certainly.
And I'm going to put it in the show notes, but I just looked it up online. It's free, and it's quiz.gretchenrubin.com. Yeah. So thank you. I'm going to go take that. It's free off the phone.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the off-the-wall one. What's the basic one?
The basic one is your Excel spreadsheet.
Ooh, okay.
Google Sheets. It's kind of like, it's so basic, people don't think about it, but when you're in a job search, you need a place to put your notes. You need to know who you've reached out to, when you've reached out to, what did you discuss? So, like networking, a networking tab. Oh, I've looked at these particular companies. They're on my list. This is when I did that. I reviewed them. I want to apply. Or I've applied. When did I apply? Did I talk to anybody? Because what happens when you are in the job search is that you're doing a lot of different things, and it's easy to forget or get confused.
Yeah.
And what you don't want to do is somebody calls you for a phone interview, and you have no idea who this is, what company it is, and what position you may have applied for.
It can happen fast if you don't keep track.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to have something that you can use to be kind of your organizer. Now, it doesn't have to be Excel. It could be whatever works for you.
Right.
But something where you're keeping some track of things.
And where you put your finger on it quickly, right?
Absolutely.
I love that. Okay, last question. My favorite. What is next for you?
Well, I'm doing what I'm doing, the coaching, and I write blog posts about various topics in this realm. So I continue to write that. I'm going to do a little bit more on the video side, some more video tips. Yeah, and I'm in my mind. I have. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but as an upholder, when I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, once it's out there, I'll bet that's what I am too. Once I put it out there, I got to do it.
Yep. An online course. I would really like to do an online course to help with job search because, not everybody can work with a coach. It's not feasible for everybody, but, there's a lot of information, and I think that would be helpful.
Well, I love that, Shelley. And this again will be in the show notes, but if people want to learn more about you, your website, ShelleyPiedmont.com. I've also got your LinkedIn URL on here. Are there is there another way are those the places where people should connect with you, or is there would you rather they reach out to you through another social media form or anything like that?
I think those are the two best ways for people to reach me.
Perfect. Well, Shelley, thank you so much. I can't wait to go take my quiz. I'm off to do that right now. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and you've given people some really good actionable tips, so appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Virginia, for having me on.
You've been listening to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's SCIM online readers, hiring and decision makers, go to www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.